Ahoy and welcome back. This is David from Virgil Security. In the previous video I showed you a very simple end-to-end encrypted chat app where Alice sends an encrypted message to Bob and Bob sends another message back. We used Alice's and Bob's public key to encrypt the message and make it decryptable for the other. But what happens if they want to invite a third person to this chat? You would have to re-encrypt the entire chat history for that third person. That's not cool. Let me show you a way to invite a third person into this chat without re-encrypting the entire message history. Remember the first exercise when we created this text file and we encrypted it with a public key and then decrypted it with the private key? That's what we're going to do. We'll build a chat app out of that. So imagine Alice and Bob are decrypting that encrypted file, but we have not encrypted that file with Alice's and Bob's public key, but we have encrypted it with this external public key, and this is the private key that will decrypt it. That's what I'm going to do. This is what we call shareable encryption. First of all, I just want to remind you what's in that file. It's some very confidential information. I think it's some sort of maybe a hello world message or something like that. Oh yes, spot on. So this is the message. And again, the plan is to take that encrypted file and Alice will send it over to Bob and they can transfer it between each other. This is how the encrypted file looks like. It's a big piece of ugly base64 text. Again, we'll be using the public key to encrypt the data between Alice and Bob, and we'll be using this private key to decrypt it. Now, here's the challenge. How do you get that private key from Alice to Bob? It will be silly to send it over email. So what we're going to do is, a private key is just a piece of file. We can simply encrypt that private key. Input will be the private keys file. The output will be the encrypted private key file. And I'll give it a very long name so that you can see that it's an encrypted file for Alice and Bob. And I'll be encrypting that private key with both Alice's email address and Bob's email address. Well, you know it's not email address, but in the background, the SDK, the Virgil SDK will download those users' public keys. So here it is, yes, a little bit down here. So this is the encrypted public key that only Alice and Bob can open it, can decrypt with their private keys. Okay, if you're interested, this is how it looks like. That's the big piece of encrypted private key. Now that can go into the cloud. So let me delete the private key. And now this is the encrypted piece of stuff that Bob will get along with that encrypted message or file. So let's pretend that I'm Bob and this is what I've got. First, I'm going to use my own private key to decrypt the encrypted private key that I previously decrypted with Alice. And what's my password? The private key is my private key, and my password is, I think, Bob PSW1. Yeah. And here it is. I could decrypt the private key. Now I have the private key to open the encrypted text. So what I'll do now is, come on, yeah. I'll be using the encrypted text as an input and using my private key to decrypt it. Oh, sorry, there's an extra space. And hello world. Now let me message back some totally unrelated text to Alice. Let's pretend that this is a document that I'm sending back, not a chat message. Just type in a new document, doctor write-up, and we'll put it into text file. And I'll use the public key. Yeah, that's the file. And I'll use the public key again to encrypt that piece of text. Just put some order in place here. So first I'll encrypt that message with the shared public key that we have been using with Alice to encrypt stuff. So that's the message that Alice will get, or that's a document now, and I'll send along with that encrypted message the encrypted private key to her, or maybe she already has it. Let me delete this stuff. I don't need this anymore. Cool. So what Bob has access to, and both Bob and Alice, is the public key that is freely available to encrypt with. And just clear, I pretend I'm Alice. And now as Alice, I have the encrypted document and I have the encrypted private key. So what I'll do first, again, is I'll decrypt that private key that's been encrypted in a way that both Bob and Alice have access to it using their private keys. I'll use my private key and I will not forget my password. So I have the private key now, and I'll simply use that private key to decrypt input the document that Bob sent me. That's it. So, in summary, what we did here, we created a private public key pair, and Bob and Alice used that public key to encrypt data and the private key to decrypt the data. This way, they can share that private key with a third or a fourth person, and they don't need to re-encrypt the data with the person's public key. Now, what's left in this video, I want to show you a cool trick of how you can use Virgil's card service to publish that data encryption public key that we have been working with. And now you don't have to store it and distribute it, you can just refer it by a unique identifier. Oh, but hang on, I think I just deleted the private key, so let me just decrypt the encrypted private key again so that I have it. So I decrypted it, I have the data encryption private key again, and now I can call the card create command and set the private key as the data encryption private key, and I need to set the scope for application, and then I'll just make up a name for that card. And this will be Alice's and Bob's collaboration key. All right. So this is the ID that I'll need to save to my database, and there is the public key. I'll just delete it. And I'll echo a new message into a file again. Why not the hello world? And then I'll show you how you can encrypt this file just by referring to that unique ID of that Virgil public key or that Virgil card. Just clean up a little bit. So I'll now call the encrypt command, and for input I'll set the plain text file, and I'll have an output file. And then instead of the public key to encrypt the data, I'll set the ID of the Virgil card. Oh, sorry, something wrong. Oh yeah, it's the V card. Here you go, data encrypted. Now I'll pretend that I'm Bob again. Remember, I have the private key encrypted in a way that only me and Alice can decrypt it, because it's encrypted with both of our public keys. Now I decrypted that private key, and what I'll do next is I'll decrypt the hello world, and that's it. So in this video I showed you a very useful use case of how to encrypt data between multiple users when there's lots of changes and permissions, people come and go. How can you encrypt data in a way that you don't have to re-encrypt it every single time when someone else joins or when you kick out somebody? I also showed you how Virgil cards work for public keys. So you can publish a public key as a Virgil card and people can just refer it by ID. I hope these demonstrations were useful for you to understand how Virgil Security's SDK works. If you guys have any questions, I'm Dave at virgilsecurity.com. We have a Slack that will invite you guys to join if you sign up, and looking forward to hearing back from you. Take care, bye.